Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me very much. Great to be here. I've been kind of curious about spaces like Connected more recently as I've thought about shifting my office space a little bit. I do love where I work. I got to say, I've got a beautiful office with a full window in Bulverde looking at all the trees, but it is exploding growth so much out there. There may not be trees out there for long. So I'm curious about spaces like this and love the idea. So it was a great opportunity to get to, after meeting Brent, to come out here and check it out. What a neat space you have here. I love the artwork and just the idea of being able to work with other people.
Don't talk about it.
Quit talking. Don't talk about it, be about it, as a buddy of mine says, right? Right. Exactly. Well, as Brent said, my name is Dr. John Beach. I am a performance psychologist and specialist. So I really help anyone that wants to get to another level of performance in whatever they do. I believe that life is a series of performances. And so really helping people tap into levels that they didn't even know are possible and really dream big, and then help them really develop a specific plan to achieve those dreams. Okay, my background is in psychology in general. I did a lot of years working in child, adolescent, and family psychology, and really realized after a while that the work I love doing, it took me back kind of to my military time. I was a enlisted Army and then officer Air Force. And it took me back to some of the time when I was consulting in the Air Force with pilots and special forces, kind of performers. I loved that work. And so even though I really loved working with children and adolescents, it was folks that were motivated, folks that were going to take the ideas that I had and use them and follow up and come back and say, I did these things, give me more. I realized I needed to give myself permission to really do what I love doing. So went back to school and learned a lot about sport and performance psychology. And one of the things that was really important that I learned was this was exactly what I needed when I was a young athlete. I played high school tennis and baseball at a very good school here in town. The school won state championships 3 out of the 4 years that I was there in tennis. But I realized that I was my own worst enemy. I might be able to beat people often that I shouldn't have even been able to beat, but I could also lose to people that I should have never lost to as well. So it was not knowing that there was a whole mental side of the game that kept me from going to where I really could have gone. So that's why I love doing what I do, is now I get to help young athletes, business leaders, with the tools that were the only things that I really lacked. And so I'm going to show you a couple quick images to describe kind of what I do. Here's me with some of the athletes that I work with, college athletes, Paralympic and Olympic athletes. Love helping them and being inspired by them. This athlete right here was an Olympic level triathlete, then had cancer, was a Army medic, had cancer and decided to have her leg amputated. And now she's number 1 or 2 in the world, depending on the time of year. I think 1 right now, I believe, and is preparing for Paris this summer as a Paralympic athlete, a triathlete. So talk about inspirational. And of course, here's me kind of doing another thing that I love, which is helping business leaders. This is me doing a workshop for performance and really kind of team building at a Bulverde Spring Branch Chamber of Commerce event, leadership training. So that's a leadership program that they go through there, and love doing that. I'm also recently a member of the Bernie Chamber of Commerce as well. So love kind of that hill country area, but grew up here in San Antonio, and I love it here too. So just so you know, I practice what I preach. I'm not just telling you to do something that I haven't done. The first half of my life, I was really a complete underachiever. Okay, I mentioned my athletics, right? But also academically. I was absolutely horrendous in school. I barely made it to college. When I got to college, I realized it wasn't for me, at least the major I chose wasn't for me. And I realized I almost failed out. Then I got deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And after the conflict was over, well, first of all, during the conflict, one of the things that happened, they say there's no atheists in foxholes. That's true for my life, right? It was a time where with bombs going off all around you, you really start to step back and you start to really realize. And for me, it was this realization that there was a Scud missile landed less than a mile away. There was known to be nuclear, biological, and chemical capabilities within Saddam Hussein's arsenal, right? And every night the ground would shake from artillery fire, mortars, and bombs. And it was really that realization. If I die in a tent, because that's all we had protecting us, was a GP medium tent, then I need to know where I'm going. I need to be confident of that. And so while I was really had a foundation in faith, it was a real connection to say, quit talking about it and be about it, right? Really, what do you do to connect with God? He's always been there for you, but how do you connect with Him? So it was a real important shift in my life as well. And went back to school, changed my major from architecture to psychology, and kind of decided that I needed to listen to those voices that I'd heard growing up that said, you'd be great helping people in this way. And I just decided I didn't want to follow in my mother's footsteps. She was a counselor in San Antonio for many years and had a great practice helping a lot of people. But I said, I'm not going to do what she did. I'm going to do my own thing. But I said to realize, this is what I was called to do, right? Then I learned, this is what I was called to do, but now I need to know, how do I love applying this stuff? Who are the people that I love helping the most? And so what I want to do with you all today is starting by increasing consciousness and awareness, right? If we don't know where we are, then it's hard to know how successful we're being and where we really want to go next, right? So I included in there for you all a career wheel. And so I'd like you to take a moment, and you could do that maybe after, in between talks, something like that perhaps. But go through each of those areas of life and circle, if you will, where you are and give a number to where you are in each of those areas of life. One of the things in my coach training program through IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, a very rigorous coaching program, which is kind of most recent expertise, right, and constantly learning and developing myself and growing. We really talk a lot about how energy influences people, and we talk about how to determine if the energy that we're applying to a situation is catabolic or breaking down a negative force, or if it's anabolic, if it's a building force, and to help people understand the 7 different levels of energy. And so this is a part of that, is to be able to see, where am I now in these areas of life, and which of these areas of life do I want to develop in? Where do I want to be, right? Then we're going to talk about mental skills from a performance psychology standpoint, because these things apply. You all may or may not be professional level athletes, right? But you can apply all the same principles that professional athletes use to apply them to your work life, to your strategies in connecting with other people, to determining what you want to most do in this chapter of life, right? So want to really understand those well. Then we're going to apply those to work and life. Then we're going to help you guys set a few goals for yourself, because I want you to not just be here, I want you to take something from this part of the talk and use it, apply it to your life moving forward. All right, so we talked about that. Now, let's think about this. What is really the difference between people who are ordinary, average, and people who are truly successful and truly fulfilled in life? What are a couple thoughts? Do they have magic powers, first of all? Do they have X-ray vision, successful people? Do they have levitation skills? Probably not, right? What do you think, Rodney? What comes to mind?
Successful people seem very focused.
Okay, they have a focus. They apply maybe a focus to their life, which is focus is one of the mental skills that elite athletes use. Absolutely, they have precision and focus, and they don't try to just do everything, right? Great. What else? Confidence, absolutely. Confidence is absolutely one of those skills that I'm always asked by parents to help athletes with. My son or daughter just does not show up the way they do tournament day, the way they did in practice. My son's a pole vaulter, and so they might tell me their daughter or son is pole vaulting 11 feet in practice and can't clear 9, at meet day, etc. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have one more back there, Rodney? Yeah.
I think folks I've noticed that are successful, they're always learning.
Always learning, absolutely. Yeah. Growth Mindset comes to mind. Great book by Carol Dweck. if you haven't read it yet, that talks about the difference, two different personality types: a fixed mindset, someone that says, I know all I need to know, I'm who I am, and often achieve a very high level of success early on, but they hit a plateau early, because it's truly people with a growth mindset that know, I'm always learning, I'm always growing, I never have it all figured out. They also see that obstacles that come their way are there for a reason, to help teach them, grow them, etc., as opposed to people with a fixed mindset that see an obstacle and run away and think, I don't want it to be difficult.
They're motivated.
They're motivated, yes, we're going to talk about motivation, very
What about
important.
Persistence and never giving up.
Persistence.
You stop halfway down the road.
That's right. Yeah,
You got to have at it.
that's right. And another way to describe that would be grit. I think of grit.
Breakfast, but anyway.
It could be something you eat for breakfast. It could be in there, but I'm thinking more of a determination maybe, and a persistence to keep going with something, because the waves and the winds of life will try to knock you off course. So a determination, a grit, if you will. They also have high awareness of themselves and awareness of others. They have high level of consciousness. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Another key is that they have a really good daily routine. And if you do not have a good daily routine, you will not get where you want to get. And I'll give you a great example of this, something I came across recently. There's a great book called The 12-Week Year. And in there, the authors Brian Moran and Michael Levinger, take you through a process of really creating a series of 12-week years. Why is that important? Well, when we create a yearly goal, right? These things that we create every year, right? And they just fall to nowhere typically, right? It's too far down the road. You cannot see it. And so this is actually taken from what athletes do. It's a process called periodization. And athletes typically, coaches will take the competition that's coming up and they will break it down into, okay, week by week leading up to that competition, where do you need to be, what level, day to day within that. So when you're focused on 12 weeks at a time, every day matters, as opposed to 365 of them, right? It just loses its power and control. Kind of like when, the Major League Baseball went from, 60 games to a million games in a year. Guess what? Each game matters so much less. I still love baseball, but I'm not as focused on every game and how many wins, etc. So breaking it down, and they suggest that after 12 weeks, you reset and you start over as if it's a brand new year. And so the victories carry forward, they're great, but the things you didn't accomplish, you start over with, right? So a great daily routine. They're disciplined throughout life. They have beliefs in themselves and others. Their self-talk is powerful and useful. Now, does that mean that it's positive self-talk? Does that mean it's negative? Well, typically we think about it as positive self-talk. I often share with my athletes and other business leaders that you need to be your own best ally, not your own worst enemy. But I will say this has been challenged a little bit recently. I just read a very powerful book that is kind of top seller right now. And it's so good I can't even remember the name of it. That's how good it is. No, it's David Goggins. He's got two great books out right now, but the first one is called Can't Hurt Me. And in there, he actually uses his reality mirror as he faces the mirror every day, and he talks to himself pretty tough. And he really calls himself out if he needs to. If he's overweight, he calls himself out. So it might not always necessarily be positive self-talk, but it needs to be helpful. And so asking yourself on a regular basis, is this thought helpful for me? Is this thought hurting me? If you need to get yourself in gear, we were talking a little bit about that earlier. Some folks wanted to kind of increase their exercise routine, lose weight, etc. Maybe you need to talk to yourself tough, but it better be supportive at the same time. Does that make sense? So positive or negative, but supportive and helpful. People that are really become successful have this confidence, as you mentioned. And more than that, I think they have an acceptance of their imperfection, acceptance of their gifts, right? And they have non-judgment. I would say the most valuable thing that I learned in all of my coach training is just how prevalent and powerful judgment is. And we use it all the time toward ourselves, toward other people, yet we may not really be aware of it, right? I love that what Jim Carrey said, that your need to be accepted can leave you invisible in this world. He talked about how his father really wanted to be a comedian and was an incredibly funny man. But he just didn't think that was possible, to make a living as a comedian. So he became an accountant. And I think years later, Jim saw him leave that job completely unfulfilled. And so he learned from that and said, I will not do something that I'm not driven to do. I will find a way to do what I want to do. One way that they do that is believing this. How would life be different if you believed you cannot make mistakes, only choices? Why is that powerful? Because we look back on choices that we made. Rodney and I were talking about a couple choices we've made in business and life and opportunities might have been missed, right? We look back at them and call them mistakes with hindsight. As they say, hindsight is 20/20, foresight is not, right? So really being able to use the choices that you made to learn from them, yet not apply this judgment toward them and call them a mistake, but determine, okay, what did I learn from that and what will I do differently the next time I have an opportunity to do so? Helpful. Beating yourself up and calling them a mistake, I would argue, unhelpful. That's not the way the best thinkers and leaders think, right? The ability to achieve the results you desire lies mainly in letting go of the need to achieve them. Gary Mack, from a book, Mind Gym, said that, right? So ironically, there is no such thing as human perfection, but ironically, it really lies in being able to accept the imperfections while developing the next step and aiming for something greater. The demand for perfection is the greatest enemy of the good, Richard Rohr said. Next, what else do athletes do? Screw your why. Now, is finding your why invaluable or unimportant? No. I think it's very powerful. But I don't know about you. I get a little bit tired of hearing the same old things all the time. Find your why, find your why. And here's what I think is important. It's not that finding your why isn't key, but it's really figuring out your what first. And to me, what that is embodied in is this quote by Howard Thurman. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And do that, because what the world needs is people who've truly come alive, right? So once you've determined what it is that really lights you up and how you were created to do what, then dive into your why. And I've got a sheet there. I want you guys to fill out that sheet that discusses that. It discusses your what, and then it goes into your why. And I want you all to create 1 or 2 goals from our conversation today to help you move forward. You got to keep me on time, Brent, by the way, too, okay? How much time do I have?
About 4 minutes.
All right, great. And of course, this is the culmination. What and why is taking all of these things and bringing them together. What are my talents? What are my gifts? And there's some great strength finders out there, some great gifts. Ways to determine your gifts and look for those, complete them and discover them, and ask your friends. I did a great process recently that really was an in-depth look at your unique ability with a book called Your Unique Ability, by the way. It started with a great book called 10X is Easier Than 2X, okay? That really takes you through a process of recognizing that to achieve a monumental growth, you have to take a look at the things that you're doing. And chances are, if you just keep doing those and you add one little thing every day, you're going to be from here to here at the end of the year or the end of the 12 weeks or whatever it is, right? It really is going to take taking a look and dissecting and probably letting go of about 80% of what you do and centering in with focus on the 20% that brings you the maximum outcome, the maximum, kind of jolt of energy, the things that you love doing, and really zooming in and centering in on those things. That's probably going to be the key if you want exponential or 10x growth. And so it's a great book that walks you through that process. And then they did the follow-up, which was Unique Ability. Well, let's think about a way that athletes really use mindset to help them be successful. In his book, Jonathan Fader, Life is Sport is the name of it. he talks about a different way to kind of think about it. What we often think about is optimism or pessimism. The glass is half empty, or the glass is half full, right? And Jonathan Fader says, let's take a different approach. Let's consider that the glass might be half full, but let's use objective evidence to really determine that. So you go into a process believing there might be an opportunity here, there might be something good, but you use feedback to determine how it's going, right? And the 12-week year is great about that, because the 12-week year really has you keeping track and evaluating your recent week each week based upon some measurement and a percentage that you get of how many of the goals did I get that I achieved, the things that I wanted to do, what percentage did I complete this week? And then you use that to move forward. So gaining specific evidence, not just in general, well, am I pessimistic or optimistic, right? Because pessimists have a real problem with being an optimist, right? What do you think pessimists, some of you might be pessimistic, right? But what do pessimists fear will happen if I switch and become an optimist? What do they worry about, do you think? What's that? Failure. Sure. What if I miss something important here? I better not just believe that, Uncle Remus, everything's roses and birds singing and sunshine, right? I better take a look at what's going on. And there's some truth to that. At the same time, are we going to be successful if we go into things expecting them to not work out and focusing in on what didn't work for us? Not going to work real well, right? David Goggins takes his life, which was a brutal childhood, and he uses that as part of his story to generate how did that shape me? How did that motivate me? And then ever since, Navy SEAL training and Army Ranger School and Delta Force training and ultra marathons, he now uses the challenges that he does physically to prepare him for things mentally that he will face in the future, that life will throw at him. And so that's about a constant changing, improving, and challenging yourself. I don't suggest necessarily that you do it the way he does it, because the way he does it is a little intense and insane, right? But the principles are amazing. So, objective optimism, have a present and future orientation, which means I often do. I kind of do a demonstration with this often, but because of time, if I was going to take the ball and putt it into the putting green that I have down here, imagine that, right? If I had a focus on my last shot that I missed, it would be the equivalent of trying to hit that ball looking backwards, right? And if I was overconfident in myself, knowing that the ball was going in, but without lining it up, I'd be looking too far in the future. And that's what we often do, is we think too far in the future, and then we don't bring our focus to what's the next thing I have to do today, right? And so it's the idea of present and future orientation. I'm looking down at the ball, and I'm picturing that ball, but I'm keeping my focus here, and I'm not changing my focus until that ball is released, and then I watch it go into the hole. And that's really a visual, I think, for all of us in terms of our life day to day. So important to believe this, right? Because the subconscious is wired to keep us alive. That's just a great thing. It's very helpful if we're about to walk into traffic and we get a feeling inside that something's happening here. This is dangerous. That's good. But unfortunately, the subconscious also often keeps us from taking risks and going for things that might truly lead to that biggest leap or that greatest fulfillment in life. So I love what Jen Sincero says in her books, badass books. There's You're a Badass, or You're a Badass at Making Money, and some other really powerful books. She talks about you can have two things. You can have your excuses, or you can have the success that you desire, but you cannot have them both. And so you need to decide, do I want my excuses more, or do I want my success? And so these are the 4 C's. I left you a handout that you can kind of go through these more and really think about applying them. But really being able to apply mental toughness to all the things that you do in life is really valuable. Making control and focusing your control only on what is within your control, and relieving and letting go of everything outside. I have my performers do 2 boxes. One, all the things out of my control I take and put over here. But I was too tired. But it wasn't the right timing. I was sore. I didn't want to. and put them over here and focus their energy on these things. What's the market doing? That's over here. Nope. What do I do today to make it likely that I will have the success that I want? Commitment, challenge, these things are written out in more detail, and because we're a little short of time, I want you all to focus in on those questions that are on the handout that I gave you and create for yourself 2 to 3 goals that you will be working on based upon this principle of how do the best performers handle their thoughts, handle their lives, handle their vision, and really make time to create that vision for yourself. What is the next chapter of life for me? And base that upon the things that truly give you meaning and value in your life, not what anyone else thinks you should be doing. Thank you for your time.